Hey everybody, this is Mrmagic, and today we are going to do a deck tech, an EDH deck tech, on one of my favorite cards of all time, Kiki Jiki the Mirror Breaker. Have him here in the original Kamigawa foil treatment. I have the non-foiled Time Spiral, and the foil Time Spiral is on my list to acquire. But I'm going to talk about how I play this commander. But first, I have to give a shout out to Tundrum Gaming, and I will have a link to his deck tech in the description. But you just gotta love the way that that he runs this commander, and I think if you like degenerate garbage, you're gonna like what we have going on here. So we're gonna start off with our lands. I run 29 mountains. Nothing real special there. So there's 29 mountains. There's a Spine Rock Knoll and an access tunnel. Spine Rock Knoll is your red hideaway land, and the contingency being pay red, tap it, and you can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if an opponent was dealt 7 or more damage this turn. So not a particularly difficult contingency to meet in Kiki Jiki. Then you have the access tunnel, which says target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn, and wouldn't hurt to throw. You could swap out a mountain for a rogue's passage, just to guarantee you get some damage through. So that's our lands, for a total of 31 lands. Next, we have our mana base. There is some money here, and you can sub out. You can sub out some more inexpensive things like Thought Vessel for certain of these. There's Mox Opal, and I do own 2 real Mox Opals, but they're in other decks. There's a Jessica's Will. Generate lots of red mana, and if you have Kiki on the field, you can also, this is also card advantage because you can exile the top 3 cards and play any of them this turn. Jeweled Lotus, again, I own one of those, but it's in a completed set of Commander Legends that's in a binder, and it just lives in that binder, so it's proxied here. There's Braid of Fire from Cold Snap. Has cumulative upkeep, add red to your mana pool, and this is from way back in the day when Magic had mana burn, and so it was a problem trying to figure out what to do with this more and more and more red mana during your upkeep. You had to continually spend that red mana at instant speed. Now, of course, that's not a problem. It doesn't burn you. Got Priest of Urabrask. Costs 3, and when it enters the battlefield, add 3 or add red to your mana pool. And so if Kiki's already on the field and you're just having trouble finding combo pieces, which shouldn't be a problem, but anyways, you can copy that with Kiki, and then if nothing else, you got 3 extra mana every turn. You've got Hazaret's Monument. Red creature spells cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. So there's some card advantage built into that. Professional Facebreaker out of New Capenna is fantastic. Has Menace, and whenever one or more creatures you control do combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. So there's your ramp. So this is mana ramp on a stick. And card advantage built right in says sack a treasure token and exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So if you just got more treasure than you know what to do with, you can always sack one to draw a card, or functionally draw a card. Got Arcane Signet there. I'm probably going to swap that out for a Mana Crypt, because I have Mana Crypt in the mail. So I'm actually going to set that aside for a mental note, because I know I need to swap that out. Got Dockside Extortionist there. When he's a Goblin Pirate for 2, when he enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Got Chrome Mox. Costs 0, and you imprint it with a non-artifact, non-land card from your hand. Add 1 mana of the exiled card's colors. That's always going to be red in this deck. Mana Geyser for 5. Add red to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. And we're going to cover it in a little more detail further on, but that goes great with War's Toll, which we'll hit in a few minutes. It's an enchantment for 4. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, tap all lands that player controls. And then if a creature an opponent controls attacks, all creatures that opponent controls attack if able. So there's nothing like having the War's Toll on the field, and everybody's tapped down, and you grab 15, 20 mana off your Mana Geyser. But more on that to come. We got Sad Robot. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. And, you know, with Kiki, you can just, every turn, you can grab yourself another Sad Robot, grab yourself another land. And then Soul Ring. Soul Ring's pretty much an auto-include in every Commander deck. It should be. It's great stuff. We've got ourselves a package of card draw here. We run Thrill of Possibility. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. Cathartic Reunion. Cost 2. As an additional cost to cast the spell, discard 2 cards and draw 3 cards. Fateful Showdown for 4. Deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. So you hit somebody, and then you draw cards. Browbeat. Any player may have Browbeat deal 5 damage to him or her. If no one does, target player draws 3 cards. Got Imperial Recruiter. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. We're going to set him aside because I'm going to show you the kinds of degenerate things that he tutors for in this deck. Renegade Tactics. Target creature can't block this turn. Draw a card. Fervent Mastery. I'm going to skip the alternate casting cost stuff and go straight to search your library for up to 3 cards, put them into your hand, shuffle, then discard 3 cards at random. So it's a filter. What you do is you just go grab 3 combo pieces with Fervent Mastery and hope that you didn't discard all 3 of them at random. Valakut Awakening is put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. Gamble. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, discard a card at random, then shuffle your library. Seize the Spoils. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Tormenting Voice. As an additional cost to cast this Tormenting Voice, discard a card, and then draw 2 cards. Plundering Barbarian actually goes in the ramp package, but when he enters, you can destroy target artifact or create a treasure token. Mind Stone is ramp or card draw, depending on what you need. Crash Through says creatures you control gain trample until end of turn, draw a card. And in case you hadn't noticed, there is a ton of card filtering in red. That's the flavor of card draw in red. You're going to draw cards, and then you're probably going to discard your cards. And so, what happens if you go for your gamble or your fervent mastery, and you ended up discarding all of the combo pieces that you went and tutored for? Well, that's fine. You just play your Underworld Breach, and then every non-land card in your graveyard has Escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard. And at the beginning of your end step, sack Underworld Breach. So this is what you play on the last turn of the game. You ditched your combo pieces into the graveyard off of one of your filters. And you know what? You just snag them right back out by exiling stuff. So then we're going to look at a couple of Alter the Brood. We're looking at artifacts right now. Alter the Brood I feel like is an auto-include in this deck because it's a 1-drop, and whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under my control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library onto the battlefield, or into the graveyard. And so as many permanents as we are creating with Kiki Jiki, it's just so easy to mill the opponent for stuff. If we get this out early and for any reason somebody else has stalled us out of the game for a minute, we're definitely going to be throwing some of their stuff in the graveyard. And they just have to cope with it. Rings of Bright Hearth and Basalt Monolith combo off to make infinite gray mana, which is very, very useful. So those are, that combo is old news. Umbral Mantle is good stuff. So, for example, if we've got Kiki on the field, and let's say he's got Umbral Mantle on him, and then we've got, say, our Priest of Urabrask is already out. So Priest of Urabrask, add 3 mana, then we'll tap Kiki Jiki to make a copy of Priest of Urabrask, and that Priest of Urabrask will add 3 more mana. Then we'll spend that 3 mana and untap the Kiki Jiki to give him +2/+2. And we can infinitely tap and untap Kiki Jiki, making an infinite number of copies of Priest of Urabrask, hasted copies, mind you, of Priest of Urabrask, plus pumping Kiki Jiki by 2, +2/+2 on every single cycle. So Umbral Mantle is a great combo piece. And there's a handful, you could do a Dockside Extortionist, to make tons of mana. Anything that's going to make at least 3 mana when it ETBs, you can do that with. So our next package deals with the control/protection segment of this deck. First, we run Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves to protect our Kiki Jiki. Then we have a handful of control type spells. Chaos Warp. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. For somebody's got a big threat, why not just shuffle it back into their library for them? Tybalt's Trickery. Counter target spell, choose 1, 2, or 3 at random, and its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of the library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of their library in a random order. So Chaos Warp and Tybalt's Trickery help you get rid of problems, but you want to save these for when your opponent is doing something really bad, because you want whatever it is that you go find, or that they go find, you want to make sure it's not as bad as what they're already doing. Wild Ricochet. Choose new targets for target instant or sorcery spell, then copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, for example, if somebody wants to counter your Kiki Jiki or counter a combo piece that you're playing, well, then you can Wild Ricochet even their counter spell by causing you choose. So, let's say they counter. I'm playing Kiki Jiki, they counter Kiki Jiki. I Wild Ricochet, forcing this counter spell to target itself. And then, if I want to, I can even make the copy counter the original. And that way, Kiki definitely enters the battlefield, or whatever it is that I'm trying to cause to enter. Increasing Vengeance can do the same sort of thing, copy target instant or sorcery spell. If somebody's trying to counter me, I can copy their counter and redirect it back at themselves. Plus, Increasing Vengeance has a flashback, in which case you get to copy the spell twice. Finally, Chef's Kiss. You gain control of target spell that targets only a single permanent or player, copy it, then reselect the targets at random, and then the new targets can't be you or a permanent you control. And so that can be a little wonky, trying to work out exactly how many legitimate targets there are and assigning them a number and rolling the dice and so on, but it gets the heat off of you and what you're doing for a minute. Then we have Shock and Lightning Bolt as just a touch of creature-based removal. Or damage-based creature removal. Then we have Blasphemous Act, is our red board wipe. Star of Extinction is another great red board wipe. Then, for a little more control, we have War's Toll. which we've explained earlier, whenever an opponent taps a land, they tap all of their land. And when War's Toll was originally printed, it wasn't as good as it is now because you held unspent mana until the end of turn. But under the new rules, all the mana fizzles at the end of each phase. So, you know, whatever they're going to do, they got to use all their mana fast. Next, you know, if they can't hold anything back from attacking. You know, they can't protect any of their creatures by holding them out of combat. If they're going to attack with anything, they have to attack with all of it. And a lot of players will just hold off of combat in order to do that. Finally, Blood Moon. Blood Moon's just fantastic. All non-basic lands become mountains. You know, you're playing against somebody that has a lot, especially of multicolored decks, run very few basic lands. And there's nothing quite so great as giving them a ton of red mana that they can't do anything with. Our next few pieces here kind of plink the enemy. So we've got Terror of the Peaks. He has Ward, pay 3 life, essentially is what this is. Flying, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. And so if you can set up a situation where you can start making copies of Terror of the Peaks, then the copies deal damage in a factorial expression. I think is how that works. But it becomes a lot of damage. This Terror of the Peaks will see this one enter and deal 5 damage. Then another one would enter, and this one would deal 5 damage, and then this one would deal 5 damage off of seeing it enter, and so on. So that Terror of the Peaks is good stuff. Perforos, God of the Forge, is essentially the same thing, only dealing 2 damage. But he's indestructible, and you can also, if you got a ton of mana, you can just pump some of your other creatures to give them +1/+1. Outpost Siege is a great card because it's got 2 modes. You can go either Khans or Dragons. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. So it can be card advantage. Or, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So all of Kiki Jiki's copies fizzle at the end of turn, and we have a couple of sack outlets in this deck, in which case the Dragon's mode deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Finally, Impact Tremors. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent, so you're pinging your opponent down. Then our final package has to do really with creatures that combo off with Kiki Jiki. We'll do Anger here first. A lot of cards in this deck, a lot of the relevant cards and the token copies will have haste anyway, but we're pitching cards, and it just doesn't hurt to have to pitch Anger into the graveyard right off the bat. Cavalier of Flame is fantastic because it's non-legendary, so you can copy it with Kiki Jiki. It lets you discard any number of cards when it enters the battlefield, and then draw that many cards. So it can become an every turn card filter. If you draw Cavalier of Flame and you haven't drawn an infinite combo piece, you can quickly do so, because every turn you get to copy Cavalier of Flame with Kiki Jiki. And then when it dies, and every copy is going to die every turn, it deals X damage to each opponent, and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. So as you're discarding land cards off of the Cavalier of Flame, you're building up this base of land cards in your graveyard, and you're looking for combo pieces anyway, so he's dealing more and more damage. Harmonic Prodigy has Prowess, and then whenever an ability of a shaman Kiki as a shaman, or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So we can make copies of Mrmagic Prodigy if we need to make the triggers go insane. But there's just a lot of fun going on with Mrmagic Prodigy and Dualcaster Mage. When Dualcaster Mage enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy. So one of the fun ways to do this is you've got things like Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer that will allow you to, say for example, you play your Dualcaster Mage, or you so you would play Twin Flame, you'll flash in your Dualcaster Mage, then Kiki will tap to make a copy of Dualcaster Mage, and that copy of Dualcaster Mage will copy Twin Flame as well, and you end up with an infinite number, or you, let's see, Twin Flame says, choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, put a token this copy of that creature onto the battlefield. Those tokens have haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So with this combo, you can boom, 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 make infinite Dualcaster Mages. Or with Twin Flame and Kiki Jiki, you can actually go infinite, because you can... no, you can't go infinite with just Kiki and Dualcaster, but you can with, because Kiki can't target himself. But you can go infinite by copying Dualcaster Mage, and then the Dualcaster Mage copies your Twin Flame, and so on and so forth. So we've looked at Cavalier of Flame. Heat Shimmer is the same sort of card. Create a token that's a copy of target creature, except it has haste, and at the beginning of the next end step, exile this permanent. That exit trigger will trigger a couple of different, like our Outpost Siege and things like that, a couple of those. We have Coercive Recruiter. Coercive Recruiter goes infinite with Kiki Jiki. Whenever it or another pirate enters the battlefield under your control, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It gains haste and becomes a pirate in addition to its other types. So what you do is you play Coercive Recruiter and tap Kiki Jiki to make a copy of Coercive Recruiter. Then this copy entering the battlefield causes you to gain control of and untap Kiki Jiki. And then you tap Kiki Jiki to make a copy of Coercive Recruiter, ad infinitum. The same sort of thing happens with... can be done with Splinter Twin, making copies. Zealous Conscripts is essentially the same function as Coercive Recruiter. Then Fanatic of Mogus is a creature that we can copy, and every time we copy it, it deals, when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent equal to our devotion to red. And so we get that out on the battlefield, and if we have nothing else to copy, we can ping our opponent for, Kiki's got 3 red pips, and Fanatic of Mogus has 1, so that's 4 damage minimum. If there's nothing else on the field, we've got 4 damage minimum every time Fanatic of Mogus enters. We have Goblin Bombardment, which allows us to sack a creature and deal 1 damage to each creature or player. So we can put that over in our Plinker pile. Then Lightning Crafter and Kiki Jiki go infinite. So what we do is Kiki needs to be on the field, and then we champion a Goblin or Shaman. When this comes into play, sacrifice it unless you remove another Goblin or Shaman you control from the game, and when this leaves play, that card returns to play. So what we will do is tap Kiki to make a copy of Lightning Crafter. Then when Lightning Crafter, We'll tap Kiki to make a copy of Lightning Crafter, and then at the end of turn, that Lightning Crafter goes to the graveyard, and Kiki Jiki returns to the battlefield, at which time we tap Kiki Jiki to make a copy of Lightning Crafter. And as the end of turns, the Lightning Crafter goes to the graveyard and we tap, and so on. It allows us to, but every time the Lightning Crafter enters, we can, at instant speed, tap it to deal 3 damage to target creature or player. So that becomes an infinite combo. Port Razor is a creature that whenever he has to touch the opponent, that's the condition. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, untap each creature you control, and after this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. And Port Razor can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn. So the way you do this is Port Razor enters the battlefield, and we tap Kiki to make a hasted copy. That copy attacks, and then when it does damage, Kiki Jiki untaps, and we have another combat phase. Then Kiki taps to make a copy of Port Razor, and that copy attacks. But that copy hasn't attacked anybody this turn, so it can attack anybody that it wants to, or that you want it to, rather. Combat Celebrant is another, except that it doesn't actually have to connect. Combat Celebrant has an exert trigger that works in much the same way. If it hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks, and when you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So, you got Kiki on the field, you play your Combat Celebrant, Kiki taps to make a copy of Combat Celebrant. The hasted copy attacks, exerting as it attacks, and the exert trigger untaps Kiki Jiki. And then, because Kiki's untapped, that goes infinite. Godo Bandit Warlord and Helm of the Host. So Helm of the Host goes great with so much stuff in this deck. Anytime you're copying good cards, it's just fantastic. But Helm of the Host says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary if the equipped creature is legendary, and that token gains haste. So there's nothing like having an extra Kiki Jiki every turn. But then Godo Bandit Warlord is fantastic stuff, because when he comes into play, search your library for an equipment card and put it into play. If you do, shuffle your library. So you put Godo Bandit Warlord onto the battlefield, and then you get to go put Helm of the Host onto the field. Bam, like that. And then, whenever Godo Bandit Warlord, you get to put Helm of the Host onto the battlefield, but it costs an additional 5 to equip. So if you've got 11 mana handy, which is not impossible in a deck with this much ramp. Whenever Godo attacks for the first time each turn, untap it and all other samurai you control. After this phase, you get an additional combat phase. And that beginning of the new combat phase will trigger the Helm of the Host. And so you'll make another copy of Godo Bandit Warlord that isn't legendary. And then the 2 will attack, and then you'll get another combat phase. And then the 3 Godos will attack, and then you'll get another combat phase. And then 4 Godos will attack. And that gets out of hand very, very fast. Illusionist's Bracers and Battle Mage's Bracers are equipments that copy an activated ability. And so, let's see, Illusionist Bracers gives you 1 free copy, and Battle Mage's Bracers gives you as many copies as you can pay for at the cost of 1 gray mana. And it is not hard to squeeze 1 gray mana out of this kind of thing with Kiki Jiki. Then we have Battered Golem. Doesn't untap during your untap step, and whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Battered Golem. And then Battered Golem goes with Sword of Feast and Famine. The equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from black and green. Whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. And let me think. For the life of me, I can't remember how that combo works. I remember that it is a combo, but I can't remember how it works. But anyways, there is so much tomfoolery and chicanery in this deck, and Tundrum put me onto this in the beginning, and I just really enjoy Tundrum's deck techs. I think he thinks about Commander along the same lines as I do. A lot of times I will see an idea for a Commander deck, and then I can buy that on TCG Player, but then I might spend as much money again, or more sometimes, retrofitting it to play the way I want it to play. But when Tundrum makes a deck, I'll modify it, and I might make it more degenerate than it was when he put it out there. But the man is already sadistic enough that he's thinking the way that I think. So shout out to Tundrum. Go over and check out his channel. His stuff is fantastic. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. Go make yourselves a Kiki Jiki and lose all your friends. Have a great day. This is Mrmagic out.